All right, thanks, Krista. It is 8:30, so we'll go ahead and get started here. Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for being here today for what is the fourth and likely final meeting of this tag for our work on the mechanical code's existing amendments and significant changes review. So with that, Krista, would you mind doing a roll call?
Carolyn Trapp,
Here.
Nancy Bernard, Valerie Graber,
Here.
Tom Jensen, Mike Lubliner,
Here.
Jonathan Jones,
Recording in
Chris McCarthy,
Here.
Mark Rabel,
Here.
Andrea Smith,
here.
Brandon Stock,
I'm here.
and Jeff will be here at 10. Nancy Bernard, Tom Jensen,
Here.
and we do have a quorum.
Excellent, thank you.
Carolyn,
That. Oh, and here's Nancy.
sorry, it's Nancy. I just need to let you know, I have a previous meeting at 10:30 today that I will have to step out for.
Great,
It's a half-hour meeting.
thanks. Hopefully we'll be done by then, but we shall see. Is there anyone from the public who would like to be recognized at this time?
Good morning, everyone. Terry Beals representing Sound Transit. Good to see everybody.
Welcome. Okay. Now on to today's agenda. Done item 1 there. Item 2 today is to review and approve the agenda. Item 3 is to review and approve minutes from our meeting last week. And then for item 4 today, we'll be focused on IRC chapters 18 through 24, as well as fuel gas code, and a couple of items we left open in prior meetings. So would anyone like to make a motion to amend the agenda or to approve as shown?
Motion to approve.
Second the motion.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Next up is to review and approve the meeting minutes from our January 6th meeting. So Krista has those up on the screen. Kind of scroll through those. Thank you. Would anyone like to make a motion to amend or approve the minutes from our January 6th meeting?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Thanks, Valerie.
Second that.
Thanks, Tom. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Excellent. Okay, so we are now on to item number 4. And you've all heard this spiel before, but just a reminder that in this phase of the code development process for the mechanical code updates, we are not changing or updating something that does not directly pertain to an interaction between an existing amendment or a 2021 model code change. So just a reminder, if there are ideas to clean up existing sections or to remove or to change requirements, those will need to be submitted as code change proposals. And the 60-day window for those submissions will likely start mid-February. This tag will convene in late spring for a couple of meetings to review those proposals. And anyone can submit a code change proposal, whether or not you are a part of this tag. So today we're focused on IRC chapters 18 through 24 and fuel gas chapters 1 through 8. So as usual, this group and Krista, of course, are on top of their game, and we have all the information for the remaining sections. So thank you all so much for that. The information we are reviewing today is posted on our tag page. So if you want to follow along or refer to those documents, they can be found there. So with that, I think Krista's got us up, starting with the IRC here. So, and I think she tackled chapter 18. So we will start there.
All right, I was on mute. And actually, I did get this in this morning from Brandon. So I added his notes to my notes. And there was just one new section added for block vent switch, adding a safety device for oil-fired appliances. Recommendation is to go ahead and adopt it. It does have some additional cost. And Brandon noted that most manufacturers do not have this device as part of the venting system on oil-fired appliances, but also recommended adoption.
Yep, looks good. Thanks, Krista.
Great. Anyone have any thoughts or comments to add on that one? Okay, moving right along then, chapter 19. I think Andrea had that one, but there were no changes and no comments. So we'll cruise through that and on to chapter 20 that Chris and Brandon worked on.
Yeah, this is Chris. There was no significant changes on the significant changes report. The state amendments, the M2000 basically points to the L&I boiler requirements. I think it was the same in the mechanical code. Retain that investment or amendment, excuse me. And the 2005.1 is just pointing to state plumbing code. And I didn't look too deep into the state plumbing code to see specifics as far as how that differs potentially from the IMC code, but I think we should retain the amendment.
Thanks, Chris. Any other comments anyone wants to add on chapter 20? Okay. Chris, you want to share thoughts on chapter 21?
Yeah, chapter 21, there is a lot of words added to the IMC this time. I don't know how significant the change is, being that they essentially copied the hydronic piping sections from the ground source heat pump section to the other section. I don't remember which section that was. To all hydronic piping sections. So it just kind of seems reasonable that if they're going to require certain hydronic piping for one type of system, that it would fit with all of them. Hydronic piping is hydronic piping. So I think I wasn't sure if that's a significant change or not, but I think we should accept that change.
And Chris, that one was in the significant changes report for the IRC, yeah?
Yes,
Okay, so maybe we just flag that one, Krista, as a yes in the significant change column.
There was another section 2105.7 relating to preparation of ends of pipe, and it says use manufacturer spec instead of the code outlining each individual piping type or style. I think we can accept that one, being that the manufacturers probably know how to install their materials. All of the state amendments, I feel like could be retained. I had one question on M2101.7. I looked at the RCW there and it says section not adopted for prohibited T applications. I'm not sure what impact that might have, if it can be cleaned up, since it's a state amendment that is not, it doesn't have a section adopted. I don't know what conversations we could have there, if any. The next three, piping joint, CPVC, PVC, all were a bit more restrictive than the IRC code. So I think if the state wants to have those more restrictive, we need to retain all the amendments.
Great, thanks, Chris. Anybody have any comments on retaining any of the state amendments, any issues or conflicts anyone sees? Okay, seems pretty straightforward. Thank you, Chris, for reviewing all of that.
Sorry, it does seem like we're kind of leaning a lot on the state plumbing code and a lot of the IRC that I've reviewed. I assume that's a good thing. Like Chris was saying, I didn't read through it all either. I read some of it, but and I'm not an expert in the plumbing code, so I'm not sure if we're doing that just because that's standard across the state code, or if there's something else going on there. I'm hoping, I guess, that the plumbing code is updated and relevant and doing good things there. I don't know if anybody else knows what's going on there, but seems to be consistent.
Yeah, and maybe Krista can comment too, but the plumbing code tag is meeting presently as well, going through the same exercise that we are going through. So Krista, do you know if in their tag they are reviewing this chapter as well, or is that something we should ask them to do?
No, it's just, we can't actually refer to a code that we don't adopt, and we are prohibited from adopting the IPC. So we have to replace that with the state adopted plumbing code. They are updating or working on the 2021 plumbing code now, and for the most part, the plumbing codes are fairly equivalent, but it's a deeper issue than.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, like, for instance, the PVC plastic pipe, if somebody's installing that and they're looking in the IRC, I guess somebody installing a PVC hydronic system is probably going to be looking in the plumbing code and not here anyway. So
It seems reasonable that the installers would look at their applicable code sections, but on the other side, it also seems reasonable that hydronic piping could be under the same code as plumbing piping. A lot of materials are the same, sizes may not be the same, but pipes carrying water are pipes carrying water. I don't know that there needs to be a huge distinction between hydronic and plumbing, other than potentially temperature differences, but it seems like it could make it a little easier on the installers if they know they only have to look at one code instead of remembering if they're working on hydronic or plumbing and grabbing the right code. For designers too, I guess.
Now, there are a few distinctions with the nature of a closed loop system versus a potable water system. I don't know. I'm in favor of simplification, but those things probably get engaged with the plumbing folks in their committee.
Okay, well, I think what I was hearing, Krista, is we don't have a choice necessarily because we can't reference the IPC. So,
Well, I mean, we can always request that the plumbing tag look at chapter 21.
okay, I think that's a great idea. Do they have another meeting in the next week or so?
They will be meeting, they've only had one meeting thus far, so.
Okay. Great. We'll ask them to do that and see if they have any issues with any of those references then.
Will do.
Krista, I had a question related to the plumbing code. Maybe we could take it offline. But I heard that there was some changes to the plumbing code nationally that would allow for 3/8 diameter in residential piping to fixtures. That has a profound impact on the amount of water and the time it takes the hot water to get to the fixture. I was wondering if that's something that you could direct me to, or if that's something that is being considered in our code, and whether or not that's pertinent right now with the review. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm not sure. You'd need to check with Ray Shipman, who's our plumbing code staff. I haven't looked at the 2021 plumbing code at all yet, so I don't know.
Okay. Moving on to chapter 22. I think staff tackled this one. Krista, anything to highlight here?
No, these were both just very small changes. Just adding stainless steel tubing like they did in the mechanical code chapter, and just did some minor editorials on the joints and fittings. So they just said shall be connected with fittings compatible instead of standard fittings compatible. And there were no state amendments.
Great. Okay, chapter 23. This was Mike and Brandon.
I'll defer to Brandon. I'll just say that there is a potential that I would be putting in a code proposal that would focus on defining clear maintenance and operation schedules, but I'm doing a little more investigation on that. Everything looked fine with what I was looking at, but I would defer to Brandon.
Yeah, same here. There were no changes to the IRC, so nothing to note there as far as major changes. And yeah, no, again, just a pointer reference change to the amendment to the state code. So no, again, not a significant change, just a reference.
Great. Krista, do you want to put retain in the, yeah. Cool. Thank you. Okay, chapter 24. I think Valerie very kindly tackled all things fuel gas.
Okay, so I'll take that one, and it looks like they added a lot of definitions to establish the point of delivery from the meter. And definitions around that. It's not really a significant change, I don't think. It's just clarifying where a point of delivery starts for fuel gas. And then threading compound. Let's see. Just changed it from compound to ceiling, so that's not significant. And then fittings, they added in concealed locations, you can't have plugs or tees. I feel like that is a significant change because installers really need to know that. So that should be kind of flagged a little bit for an installer and an inspector. Lined chimneys, chimney lining. Previously, the code allowed if you replaced an appliance and it was the same size, you wouldn't have to put a lining in the chimney. And that has been removed. So now you have to line that chimney. And that's significant. That is a cost impact. And then ventilating systems, terminals. Let's see, they took the language and replaced it with a figure. And that figure used to be in the appendix. And they added a chart with it. They've updated it. They've added a lot to that. So that's a good change. And then makeup air and dryer closets. Prior to this, you didn't have to have makeup air opening if it was less than 200 CFMs. And now you do. Every dryer closet has to have a permanent opening for makeup air in it. And then they removed prohibited locations. It was an unnecessary exception. And that's all there is for that one.
Okay, thank you. Any thoughts or comments anyone wants to make there? All seemed like good changes. Okay, if not, then we will head right over to the fuel gas code.
And it's going to have very similar items, of course, as the residential. But I want to start off with, I noticed I added new in there. So the fuel gas code has really never been amended, and under definitions and general regulations, none of those match the IMC state amendments. So the state has never come in and updated any general regulation or definition that is similar to the IMC and also the IBC. I don't know if they want to just lump the fuel gas code in behind the IMC and not make changes, but there's a lot of changes that should be made to scoping, to definitions, to permanent construct, to general regulations. And I know I have to write in for a code change proposal for those, sounds like. So we'll start with scope. So the scope needs to be updated. It doesn't include any of the R references. It doesn't say R1, it doesn't have any of the I references. It doesn't match the IMC. And then we need to update the year for the NFPA in the scope.
So I guess, Valerie, before you go further to
Mhm.
first touch on your question, Krista, these amendments Valerie's thinking of do seem to just drive consistency between the fuel gas code and the mechanical code. Do these seem reasonable, or is there some way where the fuel gas code kind of inherits some of these without amendments?
It seems reasonable. I think we've just stayed away from it because we don't have explicit authority in the RCW to adopt the fuel gas code. So we've always just seen it as an extra chapter of the mechanical code and treated it as such. But it would make sense to have the same amendments in both of the codes.
So is a code proposal change?
That would be the cleanest way to do it, yes.
Okay. So say, for instance, under IMC, there's a section for under general regulations for guardrails. The fuel gas code and the IBC do not match that section at all. So if somebody was building it under the IBC, it would be completely different than under the IMC. So there's a lot of inconsistencies with some of our general regulations. I just want to point that out. So I can write a code change in for the scope. The scope needs to be changed. Well, we don't need a code change proposal for that. We can change the scope because we've already amended that.
Yes.
Okay. And then, so I'll start off with stop work. That's a general regulation. Definitions, same as the IRC, point of delivery, definitions added for the point of delivery around the meter. I added anything new I'll put in as a code change proposal. Let's see, under general regulations, this one's kind of significant. This is gas fireplaces in group I2. They modified that to be more specific on where those gas appliances can go and can't go. Prior to that, prior to that, they didn't separate those two occupancies. And then the code has made a lot of modifications to listed. Instead of listed, it now says tested in accordance to. And then they've changed a lot of approved by the jurisdiction, and now it has to be engineered. So that's throughout the code. Then that one is new equipment. Guardrails, that matches the IMC. Let's see, fuel burning, the condensate now matches the IMC as well. Gas piping installations, there's engineered, approved, so that's throughout the code. Most of these I just show that they are now matching the IMC or the residential code. And let me go through what they say on the significant changes. And let's see, terminal locations. That's a good code that was added. This has never been in the code. So gas dryers, there was no real requirement for a distance from that termination to any intakes or building openings. So that one's significant. Dryer closets, again, the makeup air is required opening. And then return air. Let's see, added text, return air shall not be taken from a mechanical room containing a furnace. That's kind of redundant. And then removed an exception, unnecessary exception. And then the fuel gas code references NFPA 58 2017. So we need to update that to 2020. So there's not much there, and it's very similar to the IRC, of course.
Thanks, Valerie. On that
Mhm.
last one, Krista, in chapter 8, the reference standards, just updating the date of that, does that one also need to be a code change proposal, or can that one be up to?
No, I can do that as part of the, since it's part of the statute changes.
Great. Okay, so I'm assuming then in the tag comments recommendations column, these are all either adopt or, well, most of them were adopt because there weren't any state amendments to retain, except in that very first section.
Oops.
As
So
well,
I highlighted the ones that I thought were important under general regs and definitions to match the IMC. And let's see, what else did I have on that? Yeah, I guess the scoping is the biggest issue because it doesn't match any of our codes.
yeah, those amendments to drive consistency seem to make a lot of sense. Thank you for recognizing that. Does anyone have any other comments or questions for Valerie on changes to the fuel gas code? Okay, well, thank you.
Good
Very-
thing.
Yeah. Okay. Quiet group today. So I think then we are on to our next item, which is revisiting. Well, I guess before we move on here, would anybody like to make a motion to approve our recommendations for IRC chapters 18 through 24 and for the fuel gas code chapters 1 through 8?
Move approval.
Thanks, Nancy.
I second them.
Thanks, Tom. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Great, motion passes. Okay, so I think we have, yeah, let's start with this one. I think this is Mike, maybe you had taken on the lead. We talked about this definitions back in our December 16th meeting, and then we covered all the ventilation chapters in our last meeting. And so I think with all the background in that work and understanding all the changes, just revisiting how we wanted to modify these definitions. So I will turn it over to you.
Okay, yeah, we had a ASHRAE 62.2 committee meeting yesterday. We're revising definitions. So I don't have anything specific at this time for you on that. I think accepting the staff's recommendations is appropriate. If for some reason there's some differences, I can bring them back and make some recommendations when I put in some proposals that are related to that standard, if it's something that is appropriate. That's kind of where I'm at on this one. I'm still doing the research.
Okay, so accepting the staff recommendation for now, but if anyone that's
I don't see
inappropriate
any
or has better ideas, submitting a code change proposal to.
Yeah, I don't see any deal changes for now, but I would let you know when we do the code change proposal.
Okay. Any further discussion or comments on taking that approach? Okay, Krista, are you clear on what that change looks like?
All right.
My thoughts on that, just one last thought on that is that if we were to address this issue of how one balances a system and what the level of precision and accuracy is, that might likely be more of a training activity for the stakeholders and letting jurisdictions know that there are some limitations in the real world as opposed to trying to codify this. Thanks.
Noted. Thank you. Okay, so that is the one item. And then I think the other item was IMC section 920.4. And Mark, I think you explained a bit about this one in the last meeting, but perhaps you can just restate your research and conclusion so we can document that here.
Yeah, it looked like the code committee was just trying to get the combustion products kind of out of there. Our concern was that it didn't kind of define what kind of unit heater was in that space, but it's under the fuel appliance chapter. So I guess I would say it applies to the fuel fired unit heaters. So I would say we would adopt that.
Great, that makes sense. Any other comments or discussion on that item? Okay. Was there anything else, Krista, that we had left open?
I don't believe so.
Excellent. Well, let's take, would anybody like to make a motion to approve those two recommendations we just added here?
Move to approve the two recommendations.
Thanks, Tom.
I'll second that.
Thanks, Brandon. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, with that, Krista, is there anything else we need to cover today?
I don't think there is. I think we're actually done.
Okay, amazing.
That was a short meeting.
Great. Well, just want to again extend gratitude to all of you for putting in hours of work aside of these meetings, and then also for showing up and participating here. Also want to, on behalf of all of us, say thank you to Krista for her knowledge, organization, and hard work. Thank you, Krista. And yeah, I think for everybody, just as a final reminder, again, the window for submission of code proposals will be roughly 60 days and will likely open in mid-February. So you can kind of put that window on your calendars. And then this tag here, we will reconvene in April or May to review, discuss, and consider all of those proposals. So with that, does anyone have any final thoughts or comments before we adjourn? Okay. We are.
When are you retiring?
I actually just turned in my letter for March 4th. So, and actually, Krista and Caroline, if I could stay on, I want to talk to you about my replacement and what that looks like and how to do that. So.
Sure. Yeah, no problem.
Well, it was great working with you. I'm sorry you won't be here to work on the amendment proposals.
Yes, it was great working with you too, Nancy. Thanks.
I echo that sentiment too, Tom. Congratulations.
All right. Thanks, Mike.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay happy and
Have a good
healthy.